Singing blog 2. What did you do to warm up your voice today? In the lesson today, we started with some stretching techniques. We looked firstly at stretching our neck. And for this, we stood in neutral, facing forward, and we took our chins over our shoulders as much as we can. And then we breathed in, and then after 4 seconds, we breathed out and took our chin further over our neck as much as we could on the breath out. We did that facing both walls, so 2 different directions. That just stretches your vocal cords in your neck, gets them all warmed up. So that's how we started. And then secondly, we looked further into the Alexander technique, which we have looked at in previous sessions as well. And so for this, we had to lie in supine position with our legs bent, facing our necks facing up towards the ceiling, but not too far back that it strains our vocal cords, just nicely positioned upwards. And we looked at how there was a little curve in our back against the floor, and how that curve goes away when we've got our legs bent up so that our backs are flat against the floor, and how the curve comes back when our legs are stretched out fully. And we didn't want that curve, so we had our legs bent up, lying against the floor, back straight against the floor, facing upwards. This is sort of a good position to be in, because it helps with taking as much of the breath in as you can. It helps with your posture. And we looked at taking in breaths and pushing our diaphragms down. So we imagined it as having a balloon in our stomachs, that when we breathe in, we're filling the balloon up with air, and our diaphragm is pushing right down, so that we can get air into the lungs as much as we can possibly get, and then breathing out. And we looked at how long we could breathe out for. So first of all, we just breathed out, and then after we'd done that, we sang a note. So we would lie on the floor, breathe in, fill the balloon up with air as much as possible, and then do a ah for as long as we possibly could. What I realised when doing this was that I couldn't, just on air, I couldn't really hold that note for very long. But then we looked at engaging our stomach muscles into pushing that note out, and when we've taken the breath in on the floor, we're lying there, we were about to when I used my stomach muscles and really pushed that note out, I found that I could control that note and hold it for a lot longer. So that exercise, as we looked at last week, that's about making sure that our alignment is correct. So we've got the right posture. It's much easier to do this exercise lying on the floor than it is to do it in a chair, because we did actually try doing it in a chair, and we found that it was actually a lot harder to do the exercise when we were sat up, and a lot easier to do it when we were on the floor, because our alignment is just completely correct when we're all on the floor. So we look at that exercise for good breath control, and that helps us with holding notes for longer. And when we get the right breath control, that can help us get higher notes. So that's a really good technique to do, and it definitely really helped me with holding that note for longer and really controlling that breath. We also looked more at some focus exercise. So last week we looked at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 warm up, where we sing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and we repeat it, and that's to help us focus on what we're doing. Really get us to bring it into the here and the now, so that we're not focusing on different things. That was really good for that. And then we looked further into the 3 techniques: sob, speech quality, and twang. We looked at how we might use these 3 techniques in our performance, not completely, but bits of it to make our song sound better. So twang, we might not use it a lot, but we might use it a little bit to sort of add that sort of extra to the song, to try and get us the notes. Last week we looked at Idina Menzel in Defying Gravity, and how she uses twang in the song to reach the high note. And this week we looked at Les Mis. We looked at I Dreamed a Dream, and how the singer might use a bit of sob to get to that sort of I dreamed a dream in time gone by. So we looked at how the singer might use sob there to add to that. So we looked at the 3 techniques in more detail this week. We learned that in auditions, when you go to an audition for Broadway or for West End or anywhere you might go, the musical director might ask you to sing using sob. They might say, okay, now can you just sing me this line using twang? So we needed to learn how we can do that and where might be appropriate to do that, so that if ever we do go to auditions and get asked by the musical director to add that in, we know how to do it, we know what we're doing. So we looked further into that, which was really useful. Describe the tasks set for the session. So our first task was to warm up, which is where we looked at sob, twang and speech quality. We looked at the Alexander technique, which I've mentioned. And then we had a look at the song Tell Me It's Not True, which is from Blood Brothers. We looked at this song last week and we sang it through as a class. And this week we added the harmonies in. So we looked at the higher harmonies for Tell Me It's Not True. We looked at the lower harmonies for Tell Me It's Not True. I was doing the lower harmonies, and we split off into small groups. Some did the higher, some did the lower, and some did the tune. And I was doing the lower harmonies. So we added some harmonies into that in today's lesson. And then later on in the day, we looked at Skid Row, which is our other ensemble song from the musical Little Shop of Horrors. And today we actually blocked this song, so we added in some movement, some dancing. We looked at costumes, what we might be using for costumes for this. I was one of the dancers, one of the 3 dancers at the beginning of the song. And so we looked at our dancers for that, and then we looked at the homeless people in it and what their movements are going to be. So that's what we went over today. And then our final task in the day was to look at our solo songs, and we performed these back to each other. We gave each other feedback. In today's lesson, I looked at Gimme Gimme from Thoroughly Modern Millie, and I received feedback from my peers and from my tutor about that song as a potential solo song for me. Describe your rehearsal performance and the progress you have made here. If you are observing another performance, do the same for another student. So in the morning, we worked together as a class. So we had the tutor leading the warm-up session, and then we had our tutor organising the harmonies for Tell Me It's Not True, and we looked at that as a class together, and we worked as a team with that, and we did the same for Skid Row as well later on in the day. So we worked as a class, we worked together, we added our own ideas, and we came up with the blocking and the harmonies together as a group. When we were doing our solos, we worked a little bit more independently, where we practiced our solos, we got up, we performed them as we would to an audience, but then we worked as a team when we were giving each other feedback. So as a whole class, we were delivering and receiving feedback to one another, to try and improve those particular areas in each song, and work on them for next week. So in today's lesson, I really feel like I've learned about sob, twang and speech quality a lot more. Although we did look at it last week as well, I feel I've learned a lot more today about how to incorporate those 3 techniques into my songs. So I've found that really useful, which I'm going to be taking home and adding in to my practice at home more to take to next week's session. What was your feedback today? So in the morning session, my tutor said that I held my note in the Alexander technique really well. So when we were lying on the floor, taking breaths in, and then holding notes, when I started to use my stomach muscles, I realised myself that I was then able, after engaging those stomach muscles with the outward breath, I was able to hold my note for a lot longer. And my tutor said that she could see that me engaging those stomach muscles helped me to get a note for a lot longer than I expected, which was really good. Our tutor also said that our harmonies in Tell Me It's Not True were really nice, and she was really impressed with those. In the afternoon session, I got feedback about my song Gimme Gimme as a potential song. One of my peers said to me today that she thought the song was a bit too easy for me. She thought that I could maybe choose a song where I was a bit more challenged. And then my tutor said that he didn't think I needed a more challenging song, but there were certain areas where maybe I could add more to it. So again, looking at that twang, sob and speech quality, adding more techniques to that. And then for my duets, me and Amy are doing Take Me or Leave Me from Rent. We got told by our tutor that we need to look at harmony lines in that, and add in certain harmonies in, particularly at the end of the song, the final note. We need to look at that. What exercises and songs do you plan to rehearse at home to help you improve your vocal technique? So I'll definitely be practicing the Alexander technique at home, because I feel that that really helped me, particularly in holding notes for a long period of time. I was quite surprised today when I realised that taking that outward breath after lying on the floor and using my stomach muscles, I was really surprised at how long I could hold the note for. And so I'm definitely going to be incorporating that into my chosen song. So Gimme Gimme's got a long note at the end. And also I've been looking at the song Being Alive from Company. That also has a couple of long notes in it. So I might have a mess around with that song and see how I feel about that, and use that sort of engaging my stomach muscles to hold these notes. And with Take Me or Leave Me as well, there is a long note at the end. Twang, sob and speech quality, I'm going to continue to look at incorporating those into my chosen songs, where I can add them in to make the songs more effective, make them sound different, make them sound like there's more character, bring out that emotion, that kind of thing. And at home, I'm going to practice Gimme Gimme and Being Alive from Company. I have been looking at the song Nothing Stops Another Day from Ghost the Musical, but I don't feel that song's as challenging as the other songs that I've been looking at, so I'm not going to do that anymore. And I'm also going to look at Take Me or Leave Me and look at those harmony lines as well. So yeah, I'm not going to look at Island anymore for Legally Blonde, because again, I don't feel that song was vocally as challenging as I would have liked it. However, what I did like about Island was I could add twang and sob and speech quality into that to bring out more character and to make that song more effective, which I really enjoyed doing. But I don't think I'm going to be taking that forward as a potential solo song at this stage. So, to-do list, I'm going to look more at Being Alive from Company, and I'm going to focus on hitting those high notes in that, those longer notes, making sure I can hold the note for a good amount of time, and also hitting the high notes in it as well. So continuing to work on the Alexander technique and to practice that technique at home and use that to help me with those notes and help me with my breath control. Looking at sob, twang and speech quality and where I can add it into some potential numbers. Learning my lines for tell me it's not true as well. And I would also like to look at some different vocal warm-ups at home that I can maybe take to next lesson and suggest as a potential warm-up for the day as a class, looking at different warm-ups that I feel work well for me. So that's my to-do list for next week.